Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
How are you?
for your testimony. So I wanted to start out with gun violence in New York City, 16 and 17-year-olds specifically, based on raise the age. Have you seen, with your executive team, have you noticed that the increase and the way that the court system's set up now under raise the age, where if a 16 and 17-year-old is caught in possession of a loaded firearm, they automatically go to family court? Do you think that if it was one of the delineated models of keeping it in criminal court, youth part criminal court, do you think that would help address the situation?
Well, you know, when we think about the raise the age, when we think about criminal justice reform, when I was here in Albany, these were the issues that I fought for. I believe in the criminal justice system was unfair. I think it targeted black and brown people, and it was heavy-handed. But when you do a real analysis in our pursuit of making sure people commit crimes are receiving the justice they deserve, we can't forget the people who are the victims of crimes. The way it stands now, where a person who's carrying a loaded weapon but is not publicly exposed is treated differently. That is just something we need to re-examine. We need to also re-examine if cases should stay in criminal court instead of a family court. I believe those extreme, violent, repeated offenders should be handled in a family court criminal part.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next part focuses again on the public safety aspect of organized retail crime. Right now, currently, if they commit misdemeanors, petty larceny, and multiple times, it's just a revolving door. Do you think there's a way that we can help address that? Maybe like having, if you have a prior conviction or 2 prior convictions within 18 months, and then you commit another crime and it accumulates, each one that you go into different stores over $1,000, making that a grand larceny felony. Do you think that would help assist?
Yeah, and there's several layers. Some of the repeated offenses that we're witnessing, particularly property crimes, they fall into 3 categories. Category 1 is the individual who is part of an organized ring. The Attorney General did an amazing job of taking down one of those rings. Category 2 is a person who's substance abuse. They are dealing with a substance abuse, and we need to address that. And category 3 are those who need basic services. So we believe that let's go after and use the criminal justice apparatus to go after those organized rings. Those people who have substance abuse issues, let's address it at the precinct level. If they will partner with a social service provider, we'll defer prosecution, and so they can get the services they need. If they're dealing with food insecurity, defer prosecution, show them the availability to food. But what we can't do is allow repeated offenders to make a mockery of our criminal justice system, and repeatedly. We're losing chain stores that are closing down. People who are being employed in those stores are losing their jobs. They're adding to our unemployment. So people who state that we're criminalizing the poor, that goes after people who are repeated offenders, they're wrong. We're going after and criminalizing the poor when poor and low-income New Yorkers are being unemployed because we're losing those businesses in our city. We can't allow repeated offenders to make a mockery of the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So staying on that topic, talking about with the marijuana shops that are opening up, some are opening up illegally, what type of enforcement is the city prepared to do? What can the state do to help? Specifically, I'm worried about it going to the old weed spot shootouts we used to have in New York City when we were both on the police department. We don't want to go back to those days. Is there anything that we can do as a state to assist?
No, thanks so much for that question, because it's a real problem in the city, and I think it's going to become pervasive throughout the state. Other municipalities like California and others have failed. We need help. Number one, as it stands now, if someone is selling illegal cannabis in a store, the police can't take action. We need to, number one, go after landlords that intentionally set up illegal shops in their location. We need to empower the sheriffs and the police to appropriately take action to confiscate those illegal uses. And we need to identify those who are selling to our children as well. We have to close down these illegal shops, or we're going to do away with all the good work that the state lawmakers did in legalizing cannabis and the business that's associated with it. Right now, we don't have the enforcement tools to correct the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And drug recognition experts? I'm hoping that we can still get some more funding. Drug recognition experts for the police law enforcement for driving under the influence of marijuana. So,
It's so important.
thank you.